Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, and I am super excited to have a special guest. And we are going to be talking about women's empowerment, women empowering women, which I think is so important, and even people empowering themselves. And my guest, Dr. Berrylin, she wrote a journal, and I will share that. But there's a link in the comments if you want to check it out. But let's dive right in. Can you tell me a little bit about your work?
Sure. Part of the reason we're here is we went to grad school together.
Yeah.
And at the end of our doctoral program, it culminates in a dissertation. And at that point in my life, being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I wanted to run a overall wellness center for women.
Yeah.
And I started looking at my own kind of overall wellness, which that word's kind of taken its own life in the zeitgeist now. That's maybe not my favorite. But that's what it was at that point. And I started looking at research coming out of California about the stress response in women. The woman is Shelley Taylor, and she started studying like how the stress response in women is different than it is in men in response to long-term stress. And so how do we promote overall health for women in all of the areas? And so what I thought at that point was I was going to open a center for women that looked at all the parts of what I would then call wellness. And so looking at mental and physical, emotional, relational, spiritual, vocational, and being able to give them services that would support all of those things. And then I got into the real world and went, I don't want to be in charge of that many people. I think there are people that have that leadership ability and kind of brain that can hold all of those parts without getting super stressed.
Yeah.
I don't fall into that category. And so what ended up happening over time is I started working with women and more women, which is the majority of my work. And so I just started applying what I had written is like, how do I help you to have a basis of care for yourself that enables you to have a strongly founded life? And you start with little things. Like I remember when we were at Regent, one of the things on my physical wellness list was drink water.
Yeah.
Because I didn't drink a lot of water back then. Right? But it's like something I had to like make a practice before.
Yes.
Now I drink so much water a day, it's ridiculous. And I don't have to put it on a list anymore because it just became a part of me.
Yes.
And so it really started with my dissertation, kind of moved with me through my work. And then once we moved to Scotland, I had some time, COVID,
Yeah.
to kind of think about like, what could this be now? And it transitioned into teaching people how to do it for themselves, and then possibly retreats, and maybe eventually a course, though I don't know I have enough in me to do that. So that's kind of where it started, and how it got to where it is that it was a dissertation.
Yeah.
That became what I teach women to do, that became, can I make a tool if someone's not my individual client to show them how to do this in a way that's applicable and easy to follow and makes things that seem far away a practice that then becomes normal.
And I will go on ahead and share it because it's the Cared For Journal, and I have it and I left it at home, of course. So I'm
Well,
physically in my
that's
office
okay.
today.
I've got
Like,
it's right here.
perfect. Yay. And it's available right on Amazon. I love free shipping. And so that people can take a look, and it's a way to care for yourself well and deepen into the perspective of slow and small. And what do you mean by slow and small? Because I really like that.
So that's kind of something that happened. I make the kind of joke that it's something that happened to me that I chose to step into.
Okay.
When I was doing, so I did a lot of my own work in that space between Regent and now.
Yes.
And someone that I was working with said to me, because he had like these windows in his office where, you can see out, but people can't see in.
Yeah.
And so he was like, Have you ever looked at the way you walk? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, You walk all the time like a house is on fire.
Like
And I was,
fast.
yeah, fast and heavy and just like, I'm going to do it. And he said, it doesn't match up to all the work you've done. It feels
Mm,
to me like an old thing that
mm,
you haven't like transitioned out of yet. And so he was like, what I want you to do until our next session is take longer strides. And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, you know me, not everybody else does, but like, "How deep can I go with this question?"
Yes.
And he was like, and he got up and he walked across the room. He's like, "I literally just want you to take longer strides." And I was like, "Okay." So I did that and I came back and I said, in my home, we valued projects,
Okay.
getting things done, maybe not achievement, but like completion.
Yes.
And so if I was walking fast, my mom would think I was busy and she wouldn't give me another project.
Exactly.
And so I realized like that's what it is. So I legitimately started learning to just walk slowly.
Wow.
And like smelling flowers is like cliche as it sounds, and like looking at clouds and allowing myself to be in the environment I was in. And then from there, it's just like all of these invitations in my life and then our life as a family to slow things down. We sold a house in Nashville when we moved to Scotland, and
Yeah.
the house that we rent here is half the size. And so there have been all these invitations in our life to like slow things down. The pace of life here in Scotland is much slower. We didn't have a car for 2 years when we first moved here. And so it was all of these invitations, and I could have like not stepped into them, but it felt
Yeah.
really important to do it.
Yeah.
And so slow and small is like the idea of if I allowed myself to go smaller, like to make my life a little bit smaller intentionally with
Mhm.
presence, with forethought. If I allowed myself to go slower, like I didn't pack so many things into a day. I drank my coffee in the silence. I walked instead of drove. What would happen to my life if I allowed things to get slower and smaller? And my experience of that is there's more joy,
Mhm.
there's more breath,
Mhm.
there's more expansion internally of like dreaming and grieving.
Yeah.
So the invitation to slow and small, I think, is really the invitation to be in your life
Yes.
and not just be managing your life.
And I just wanted to share because in my life, I was raised by a single mother,
Mhm,
and it was about doing. It was about you got to get things done,
mhm,
and doing was valued and not being. And so if
mhm,
my mom came home and I was watching TV, she would be like, "What are you doing?" And it's just like, "So what am I supposed to be doing?"
mhm.
Because it's pretty clear what I'm
Right.
doing. And, but how much I internalized
Mhm,
going, and within the last probably 5 years, and definitely during COVID, so I
mhm,
launched my private practice. I worked for an agency from the time I graduated all the way until 2020. I worked for the same agency, and because of student loans, because of all those things, like, it was nice to have that consistency. But when
mhm,
they went on hold, I didn't have to work the way I was working. I didn't have to do all those things, and to be able to take a step back, because I thought I was enjoying my life back then,
mhm,
but I had no time to breathe. I would take time, but like what I have now, because I wouldn't be here with you now if I was still working for that other agency, because
mhm,
I wouldn't have had it. I was pretty much working 2 full-time jobs, running
mhm,
a school-based therapy program, and then also running my I had a practice clients, and so just being able, I love that slow and small.
mhm,
And authenticity is something, especially as a woman, and
mhm,
being vulnerable, asking for help and support. Those are things that have been a part of my own journey,
mhm,
because it was easy to just, because I was the one that people always thought was okay. But I could get it all done, but I think it doesn't make me weak to ask for, "Hey, I could use some help with this," so that I'm not staying up until, 12 a.m. doing laundry or whatever else. And so being able to allow other people to show up in my life in that way, and
mhm,
I view it as an invitation,
mhm,
because in my brain it was sometimes I had to view it that way so that I would do it, so that I
mhm,
could invite people to support me the same way that I support them.
mhm. I think something too that we both identified is that we learn so I don't call it wellness anymore
Yeah.
because again, that's like, I don't know, it's like Instagram people in like the newest leggings. Like it doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
And so when I was working with a business coach who's amazing, and she was like, I think you need to name it something else because it was like the wellness something.
Okay.
And that's when we started talking about that word. And she just said, "Have you ever noticed how many times, like in a day, you say cared for?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Maybe just notice it." And it, like, I counted it one day, it was like 57.
Wow.
And I was like, so maybe that's my thing. And so I just started talking about like mental and physical care, emotional care. And when I started putting it that way, there was like a like absorption of it. I was like, "Oh, that feels good."
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, so many of us don't know typically how to care well for ourselves because our
Yeah.
moms didn't know how to care well for themselves.
Yep.
Or it's such a privileged thing to say, right? They didn't
Yeah.
have the privilege
Yeah.
of caring for themselves because it wasn't an option. And so sometimes the act of caring for yourself, asking for help, like something on, like if you look at the list of things to do, like, hold on, let me see if I
Oh,
can hold
wow.
this up. This is in the journal. If you look at the list, like on relational care,
Mhm.
like one of yours might be ask for help, not just when I need it, but when I would just like it.
Yes.
Like that might be one of your relational care kind of focuses is like, or foci is just to ask for help when I want it. Um, because it's such a beautiful way to care for yourself of the idea of like, I don't actually have to do it all by myself.
And I've also embraced everything doesn't have to get done. Like, there's
Amen.
sometimes it's just like that my piece, that sometimes just at the end of the night, I might leave that dish until the morning to get washed, or because there are people that they have to get their list done just to have peace at night, and I've found a way to have that peace. And if there are general questions as we are talking, thank you all for joining us, but please let me know. And I also have links to Dr. Berrylin's social media as well. But Tiffany says, yes, so true. It feels so selfish to care for myself or burden others when I can just figure it out. And it really has been a paradigm shift for me, that because I don't feel bad when other people ask me for help, or I don't view them as less than. I don't view them, but sometimes we put this standard on ourselves that we have to, I just have to know. And it can be a part of imposter syndrome or some of those other things. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that comment.
So sometimes when I hear, whether it's clients or friends or just people I'm talking to in general, talk about it feels selfish. I think the beauty of understanding it as cared for
Yeah.
is like if a child needed this thing, wanted this thing, needed to be cared for in this way,
Yeah.
would you think they were being selfish? And everybody's like, "No, they're a child." And I'm
And
like,
there are some people that have, but that's a whole other that's a whole other paradigm.
but if you're like, if a
Yes.
kid was like, "Hey, I can't get this thing, can you get it for me?" You're not gonna be
Yeah.
like, "You're so selfish. You just think the world revolves around you." You're like, "They
Yeah.
can't reach the thing."
Of course.
And so, yes, there's a difference between being an adult. We have more responsibilities. There are lots of times as adults where we have needs and wants that don't get met, and then we have to get in that process of grieving that
Yeah.
that's hard.
Mhm.
But the idea of selfishness is that I want the world to revolve around me in this thing. And it's like, no, you're just saying I wasn't created to do all the things for all the people all the time. It was supposed to be this.
Yes.
And so being able to learn to practice asking for help as a way of healing those places inside that didn't have that option,
Mhm.
that's like beautiful, like empowering care. Yeah.
I love that, and that's what I try to pass on to our child. So every day we have quiet time.
Mhm.
Unless we're traveling, unless we have something else, we normally have just time to just be. Where there's
Mhm.
2 hours out of his day where there's nothing that has to get done. He's able to just have quiet time for those. And also it's also good for mom too,
Yeah,
to
amen.
have a few hours where I can, I can step away, I can step aside. And I love that Evangela also said, time is something I never have for myself. And we all get the same amount of time. And something that I noticed with my time is being mindful about mindlessly scrolling, because
Mhm.
I could spend hours just scrolling on, normally it was TikTok for me, but or looking at YouTube videos or doing these other things. And then but how did I feel after? And
Mhm.
so I do sometimes give myself like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I give myself a period of time. But once it gets to the point where it's becoming a distraction,
Mhm.
that's where I want to engage and mindfully engage with my family, with my life, with whatever it is that I want to be more mindful of. And I
Mhm.
love how you mentioned how the culture is different. So I lived in Germany for about 5 years,
Mhm.
and everything was just relax, like, it wasn't this go, 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 you have to get everything done. People went to the grocery store every day because they went to the market. They went to
Mhm.
their little local market to just get whatever they needed, and they would look at us like because we would have this big shopping cart full of stuff, and they would be like, "Oh my gosh, what are they doing?" And, just the different pace. And so sometimes, engaging with other cultures, seeing how other people do things, because sometimes we've had certain cultural norms put on us,
Mhm.
that, okay, like, you're supposed to. These are
Mhm.
the things that you're supposed to do. As a mom, you're supposed to do this. And I hear that selfishness come up a lot with the women that I work with,
Mhm.
really struggling with taking time, that, hey, putting your mask on first. Like, you
Mhm.
have to care for yourself so that you can care for others. Like, that it's a more of a flow thing,
Mhm.
versus if you're just caring, 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 you are going to be irritable. You are going to you're not gonna have anything left to give.
So I think too, when we think about time, like that comment, like time is something I never have for myself. Again, I'm aware a lot of the privilege
Mhm.
of time.
Yeah,
And so there are lots of families around the world that when they're like, I wake up and I go to work and I come home and I do this and I do this and I do this,
yeah,
where time is different than the time that I have available to me.
yeah,
And so it's like people are in different categories. And so I try to look at when I'm working with people, I try to look at where are you and what time you actually have available. Is
yeah,
it that you're checking out by scrolling or you're distracting by keeping yourself really busy because you don't know how to be? And then there are other, categories of people where I'm like, you don't have any time right now. Let's talk about how that could maybe be different later. But right now, like whether it's financial or crisis or family, whatever the thing is, you don't have any right now. So I talk a lot about taking time for that group of people in the in between moments. And not to get graphic, but I tell my women a lot. It's like when you poop and when you
mm,
shower.
yeah,
Because usually, now not for all moms, but usually those are times when you're by yourself. So I'm like, can you do breath work in the shower for 5 minutes?
yeah,
Can you, massage your sternum and speak kindly to your body? Can you do your to-do list when you're in the bathroom by yourself that gives you a chance to get everything ready for the day before you got to hit it? So time is a privilege that I have a lot of right now that I'm very grateful for. And so if you're in a situation in life when you don't, are there in between moments? When you park your car, can you set your timer for 5 minutes and breathe and stretch?
yeah,
So I think there are different things that are afforded us. And then again, you're talking about the pressure of where you live. I notice with a lot of American parents, there's like, are your kids in this yet? Are
yeah,
you in this yet? How, oh, you didn't do that this weekend. It's like this like background noise of expectation all the
yeah.
time. And it kicks up every once in a while over here, but like you're talking about, when it's a different pace, it's easier to ignore it when it's not on top of you all the time.
Yeah.
And so I would ask people like, how do you then make some space away from it if you're in a culture where it's very difficult to make some space away from it?
And something that we did different for our family for this summer was, instead of signing our son up for like a bunch of camps and everything, we
Mm,
did family travel. And we made some really great memories, and that he'll have,
mhm,
versus, because one of my neighbors asked, they were like, "Oh, what camps did he do this summer?" And I was like, we we did a few trips. we
mhm,
decided we decided not to. And I think when you're comfortable with the decision that you've made, because somebody's always going to have an opinion,
Mm,
and I am a recovering people pleaser. Like that
mm,
was something that it used to impact me what other people thought, trying to do the right thing because I'm a pretty conscientious person anyway, but being able to say like I'm making this decision and this is what's best for our family and
mm,
we're okay with that.
mhm,
And 90% of people are going to be okay with it and there're going to be a few people that maybe have an opinion and that's okay. That's
mhm,
their opinion, but I don't have to take it on.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. But it takes work
Yes.
to get to that place where you can say, like, "This is what we're choosing. This is why we're choosing it," and to then get, like, through the comfortability of it. That all takes work,
Yeah.
and doing that inner work is a way to care for yourself.
And I love how you mentioned breath work
Mhm,
because that is something in battling compassion fatigue. So in the
mhm,
work that we do, I constantly find myself in sessions or multiple times throughout the day just taking a moment to just center myself and breathe. If I feel my heart rate starting to beat faster, or if I feel that I'm starting to get activated in my body, being able to take a step back and just breathe, and
mhm.
it only takes a few breaths. It doesn't take a long time because I think sometimes people are thinking about doing like a 30-minute meditation all by yourself or but that does it doesn't have to look like that. For
Mm-mm.
me, it's more of a throughout the day just recentering and breathing, and that's something that I found to be helpful.
And I'll say, so one of the things that I love a checklist because it makes me feel like I've accomplished things.
Yay.
So one of the things is on the week, sorry, I don't know. There we go.
Yeah.
It says like a list and you just get to check things off. By the way, this is not my journal. This is one I just have at the house. I do check
Oh,
my things off. But one of them
so
is
wait a minute, wait a minute. That one wasn't is that the one you bought? Or I
so
mean,
I
is that
bought I
okay,
just
good,
have
good. Yes, yes, good.
yeah,
Good.
I have them at my house just in
Good.
case I'm like, you need this, take it with you.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know, you have the checklist, but one of them is stretching and movement, and one of them is deep and connected and deep breaths. And I talk to my people all the time. I'm like, that can be 5 minutes. You can step out
Yeah.
of your bed and you can do them at the same time. You can just stretch,
Yeah.
do some things, whatever makes your body feel good, and do some breathing at the same time. Get your lungs moving in all directions. And if you've done that for 5 minutes when you get out of bed, you get to check them both off. So it doesn't have to be like you're talking about the big things that are like, I've got to work out five
Yeah.
days a week. I've got to do a guided meditation and do my breath work. It's like that. For most of us, it's like if you have that kind of time, you know, good on you, but
I
most of
don't
us
have
don't.
it. No.
Mhm,
No. Nice. And then I'd love to hear any of your tips because some people don't like journaling. So when they
mhm,
think about getting a journal, some people are like, ugh. I like the fact that yours is guided and there are questions and it doesn't, because some people have trouble looking at a blank page.
mhm.
And so, any tips that you give for people that maybe struggle, they're not sure if journaling is for them.
I think that, again, for so many of us, it's like, I've got a journal or not.
Yeah.
And I think if you're like journal, because for some of my clients, I mean, they could journal, and this was me before I, you know, got married, hadn't had kids. When I had more time, I was like, I can just write all day long. So there are those people. Like, you
Mhm.
don't have to be that person to journal. You can legitimately, this will take you if you want to do it, you know, a couple, maybe 10 minutes a day, twice a day for every week. Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be every day.
Yeah.
And it's just really about knowing yourself, what's happening for you and internally better.
Yeah.
And this one, I do think it gives you a lot of really good prompts. But if you just want to use it like a journal, a regular one where you can just free write, I have a journaling like freebie on my website that you can
Yeah.
just download that just tells you how to journal. But I think again, just like the stretching or the movement or the taking your supplements or drinking your water, whatever those things are, um, approaching them with like, I'm going to do this with what I have to give for the day and season that I'm in.
Yeah.
And if you journal really well one week and not the next week, or it's really like important to you for a month and then for 2 months you just do a little bit, that's great. It does not have to be this. It's got to be everything or I can't do it at all.
Yeah. I love that. I really do. The fact that it doesn't have to be, if you miss a day, then you're feeling like, "Ugh, I fail," or you're feeling kind of bad about it. And so I really do enjoy that. Any last thoughts you have about empowering women and what that looks like for you?
That's a great question.
I know.
In the work that I've done over the last we've been practicing what I think is like a long time. So, if you count like internship year, I think I've been practicing 16 years.
Yeah. 15 for
Um,
me.
yeah, and so I think 97% of the time when I get to know women through my work, I am like awe-inspired by what they've been through
Yes.
and how they've navigated it. And even like the ways they coped that don't work anymore were ingenious
Yeah.
for a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And the more I know them, I think there's always that fear, like, the more somebody knows me and knows all the crap, what's that gonna be like? The more I know them and I know their story and I hear all the hard parts, the more I'm amazed by, like, who they are and how they were built and what they have to bring to the world. And so, I think what I'm about to say, sometimes people that struggle with not knowing themselves yet can feel like that's probably not true about me.
Mm.
So what I'm about to say is, like, probably 99.9% true about everyone that's listening, is that there's this thing in you that is gorgeous and wonderful and beautiful and worthy of pursuing, and it is a gift to the world around you. And so I think the hope, the dream, the privilege throughout your life is to be able to connect more and more to that thing, to be able to flow it out into the world around you, because without it, the world is not what it could be.
Yeah.
And so whatever, if you're just starting on your journey and you have a lot of trauma work to do, or you're continuing on your journey and you're dreaming big dreams, wherever you are, that thing is important to find, connect with, deepen into, and then bring out into the world around you. And I don't know that I've ever met a woman that I didn't love that thing in her.
Yeah.
Now, I might not have liked other little parts, just like for myself, of like things she had done that need to be a little different,
Yeah.
or when I get real cranky. Like, that we all have our stuff,
Yeah.
but that thing is so beautiful, and I just want women to have spaces to just bring that out into the world because they know it, they've connected to it, they've deepened into it, and they know it's important.
And I think sometimes life can kind of cover up that part. And I think doing work, caring for yourself, because it is just such a nurturing, it does, it warm, like, because some people, like you said, they didn't get that as a child. So we have a little kid, he just finished kindergarten, and it was so adorable at his graduation. He was looking around like, where are they? Where
Mhm,
are they? And mom and dad were there. And I remember growing up as a kid, for my kindergarten graduation, I don't know if my mom, because like I said, raised by a single parent, she
right.
might not have been able to get off for that, for that school thing.
Mm,
And being able to now give my son, and then
mhm,
also give myself some things that maybe I didn't receive, it really just does just help that special part of you. It
mhm,
just helps that, I think, grow and shine. And
mhm,
so I encourage anyone to rewind back to that part and
mhm,
truly just hear Berrylin's words and take that in, because I did, like, I took a breath when you were saying that, because I just think that is so important. And
mhm.
so, if you don't mind, can you share your website? I have it linked, but if you could
Sure.
share your website, and then do you put some things out on Instagram or
I do. I had a
good?
season where I was, like, on it, like, every day, I was working with a business coach, and I was like, "I'm gonna do it every day." And then I just wasn't
Yeah,
sustainable for me, so I'm
yeah,
trying to have a relationship with this world
yes,
that is sustainable for the slow and small.
yeah,
And so if I was wired a little different, or my thing was a little different, I might do it more, but the reality is like, if it's the choice between, like, I'm gonna go walk the coastal path
Mhm.
or, like, work on my stuff for Instagram, I'm like, Instagram's gonna get on the list for tomorrow.
Just, like, take a picture on that coastal path or I don't know.
That's probably yes. But my website is www.dr for Doctor Mangin, which is Mangin, altogether lowercase.com. And if
Nice.
you go to the freebies, there's that journaling guide, which can be used with anybody's journal, not just mine. Um, but yeah, and I'm gonna have retreats over here for women. There's lots of stuff that I work on.
Oh, okay. You have to
Um,
make sure to share that with me because I just got a passport. My son, his passport should be coming eventually because and I'm gonna make that a business. Like that'll be a nice business retreat for
and
myself.
I'd love to at some point do a couple that are just for
Yeah,
people that do some sort of this work because
yeah.
it's a different, a little bit of
Healers.
a different. So
Yeah,
it's not a therapy retreat, it's a
yeah,
coaching retreat, but it's
yeah,
really to allow people to absorb being cared for
yeah.
so that they can take it back home and figure out how to incorporate that more in their life. Like if you experience it, it's easier to apply it.
I love that. And I love those different areas because I could see there just being like going for a walk, like that it wouldn't be power packed with all these different things you have to do, but just these different options with
Mhm.
like caring for your body, your food, or just kind of doing all of these different things. That is super cool. I'm so glad that we were able to connect.
I
I am
just
gonna
appreciate you asking me.
like it worked. I saw that you had released a new book. I really enjoy supporting people, supporting authors. And like you said, we went to graduate school together. I was in the cohort right behind you. And I just really appreciate I'm meeting with Frederica with Dr. Brooks Davis later tonight. Because we have a presentation tomorrow. And
Mm.
so just staying connected, I think all of those things can just be so important and there's somebody catching up and they were excited to see you.
Oh,
Once again, so glad that we were able to do this. If you ever want to do something on your Instagram, just let me know and we
okay.
can and like if it would be helpful to do something together.
That I would
But
love that, and then you
yes,
can
yeah.
just tell me how, because I have a feeling you're a little more up on this than I am.
So it's just yep. So I would help walk us through all of that. I'm gonna go on ahead and close things out. I hope
Thank
everyone
you.
enjoys the rest of their day.